That's cool.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Here and remotely. I guess we could call the meeting to order. And I don't have a specific report, so I thought we could just get into it. I did talk to Allison. But I can get a little bit to liaison report. Does anyone had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting?
I read, yes, yes.
Does anyone,
No issues.
no issues?
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Oh, right, exactly.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Perfect, and so that's minutes approved as, and are we? Is anyone taking minutes today? Are we revolving that? Or just want to make sure, as I think about. Prior minutes, should we do minutes today?
Yeah,
Okay.
Maybe
Do we have
someone
any-
out there
I know Mike's done it, I think,
on the internet here,
yeah, is anyone online?
Zoom land.
I know Rosalie, you're leaving early, you took minutes this past time, Mike has taken minutes, we're somewhat revolving. Does anyone else want to volunteer?
I can try to write. I didn't bring
Well,
my
you're
computer. but
talking a lot, I think, with your,
I am?
well, you've done a lot of research with the Curtis Island, so.
I'll take
Okay.
minutes while you talk.
I'll take the minutes
You wanna do
this
it?
time.
Okay, thank you.
I'll take 60 minutes.
I think you've done this already, too. Okay, great. And then I guess the select board report, Allison had a few things. She's traveling to Florida. She wants to maintain meeting in the French room for the use of the meeting owl and, the virtual technology, the laptop and what we're experiencing here and I guess allowing to be online. I think it would be nice though, as I heard from all of us last time, that we'd like to be in the History Center. And so I think it would be nice to continue to remind her of that. And to see if we ever have a second owl, that we could actually make that happen, make that happen. I think there is the possibility of having a second owl, but I wanted to ask you all, we're in the French room again today. Some people are remotely. How is this working meeting wise? Janice even recommended that maybe we could do all virtual. And then I did hear, well, sometimes it's nice to meet in person too. Are there any just general thoughts of meeting place? It seems like there's been some sensitivity with Allison. So I just want to be thoughtful of that. But I wanted to share that with all of you too.
There is an owl in the library.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have an owl.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Well, we should,
I mean, they might be using it downstairs, but yeah, they set
Maybe
it
we
up.
could reserve it.
It's,
yeah, it'd be
it's,
great.
it's kind of obnoxious. It doesn't always pay attention.
But would it be safe to assume that we all are still interested to meet in the library, in the Walsh History Center?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we'll continue. I don't want to let that go just because it seems like everyone and myself included wants that to happen. And so, well, but we're having some resistance from our select board liaison. And maybe just the select board in general, or just wanting all committees to meet in the French room. I don't know the story behind it, but we should,
well, my feeling is, if it's public, if the whole reason of being on the screen is to make it public, it's public whether we're here or in the French room.
We're all at home.
Or all at home, and I think this room is cold.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, this room is kind of cold, and I'd like to be near the resources if we need to look something up in the French room, I mean, in the Welsh History Center. So that's my feeling. We've expressed that before. I think we should hang in there, because if it's public, that's all that really matters. I don't see why our physical presence in this room matters that much.
yeah, okay, great. Well, we'll be sensitive to it because it seems like it is a sense of, it's something that, but I think with the right sense of confidence that we will maintain transparency
Mhm.
and be more efficient with access to documents and also just feel better about our meeting place.
Mhm.
I think that if we can, I don't want to say persuade others, but if we can provide trust in others.
Yeah.
Then hopefully we can make that happen.
That would
I think part of it,
nice.
when I mentioned Allison, was the access to documentation, which led us into another thing, which is another part of my, part of what I wanted to share is that there might not be a, as I'm still learning, a great strategic plan, or maybe we should think of one. I don't know if it's a priority or what sub-priority around historic documentation. Allison said there's a lot of historical documents at the Historical Society near the near Hannaford. And there's also documents in the town office here and looking to be scanned. And then there's documents in the Walsh Center. And so maybe it's talking to Ken at the library to understand what space might be available in the Walsh Center for more, or maybe it's accessing greater availability to the Historical Society. But there was, Allison had mentioned that we got into this greater conversation around just storage of documentation. And so just wanted to put that,
Ken is feeling really squished. You know, like, oh my God.
yeah, he doesn't have much storage, right?
Yeah, and he said, oh, at least we have the Camden Herald archived. I'm kind of
Right.
like, okay, that's big, that's wonderful, but
So maybe the I don't know anything about the Historical Society. I've tried to go, but I may need to make an appointment. So it's pretty challenging to, inaccessible, but. You know, so I
It's
don't
not
know the
open
answer
all
to it.
winter, as far as I know.
It's one.
It's not open in the winter.
yeah, they had a lot of worry about conditions, environmental conditions in the past. I have no idea now.
Pull those mics closer to you and turn.
Sorry,
Pull the top down, so people can hear.
So that's just something I wanted to mention, nothing that we need to decide today, but maybe something we talk about, and we can kind of bring into the conversation of why we'd like to meet in the Wall Center because of documentation. Maybe we'll take effort in organizing some story. I don't know what it is, but.
Well, Will, you just mentioned that you were looking at documents that were in boxes here, and where are they stored?
So they are on the street side of the Opera House, on the Main Street side, on the street, you know, side of the Opera House. There's cubicles, 2 cubicles there, and there's a scanning technology, photo scanning.
Like
Looks kind of like the
a
microphone.
copy? Or scan
Scanner,
to
and so
digital?
Allison has put these boxes that are from the DD Conover of prior documentation of Curtis Island to be scanned.
I see.
And then I don't think that's their home, like, it's not, no
It's
intention
not a
of that being
permanent
there,
arrangement, yeah.
right? And so at some point, those documents will need to go someplace,
Mhm.
and it'd be great to know where, you know, I would think, oh, let's go to Wall Center, but as I'm hearing, there's not much space.
Yeah.
And so maybe it seems like there's,
Well,
I don't
does
know the
the
answer.
town have a way to store their documents? Because they must accumulate them as
Right.
well.
right, and Allison mentioned that access to these documents is so important for all committees, because there might be some other committees other than just historic that like to look at historical related documentation, and so it's not, it's actually,
I think it's a bigger issue than just us. huh?
yes.
Yeah.
So, anyway, but, so that's my, oh, and there's $8,000 in our budget for digitization, to digitize our files. And so if someone is willing to allocate their time to help with the scanning of documentations, my impression, don't hold me to this, is that I believe the town will pay for an hourly rate for people to digitize some of these files. Maybe it's historic, maybe it's other files, but there's definitely a need on our part. And we have $8,000 to apparently to do
somebody.
that.
Where did that $8,000 come from?
I have no idea, other than it's just, maybe it was from the town, budget. That was out, but
Was it requested?
We never, I don't, as a committee, we've never requested that.
No, that's maybe someone.
But it's
donated.
not the committee's money.
Budget.
well, I'll put that to confirm with Allison, but she mentioned it to me on the phone today, and so I wrote it and circled it, because that's, to me, a good amount of money, and seems to be a direction if we're looking, helps with storage. So that's the only update I had from Allison, and I guess we could go to committee reports and spend our time getting into Curtis Island. And the research, I know I've heard from Rhonda, Pat, and Mike have spent a number of hours in the library researching. But I'll hand it off to any one of you that wants to chat about what you found and.
Well, we looked through a lot of boxes that Ken had in the Wolf Center and divided it up and went through each item and entered the data by date in the spreadsheet that Mike had put together. So at least we have a chronology of events. And so when it comes to writing a narrative, we have that available. Plus, we were trying to determine what year we wanted to aim for, right?
Mhm.
And I think we decided 1911, but I don't remember why.
In 1911, there's a report that I think every lighthouse in the state and maybe in the nation does an annual report, and it's kind of what's on the island, any lighthouse, for structures, what type of lens do they have in the light, how far is it from the mainland if it's an island, and so I see a report for 1911, and it shows all the many of the structures that were really rebuilt or built fresh from the 1880s through early 1900s.
Right.
And so to me, that's like when these structures had been refreshed and were there. And then in 1935 or in 1911, there was a boat ramp and a boat house facing Hamden, right near where you would walk up, where you would walk onto the island. There are a lot of old iron rods in the rock, and that used to hold actually a boathouse with like a railroad track that went right down into the water. So at low tide, you could launch a life-saving boat. It could slide down and then you could winch it back up when you're all through. So anyway, that was
We had
kind of a
photographs
pretty
of that.
unique piece of,
That's amazing.
that would be wonderful to rebuild.
Yeah, it would be, especially from that side of the
Yeah,
island,
If you rebuilt it, the island would get crammed with people.
Well,
one day.
no, this doesn't really change much around the access other than
Okay.
for
Yeah.
one boat.
All right.
That's,
I
that's,
trust you, yeah.
yeah, so, but anyway, it's one of the things that why we were thinking, the turn of the century would be the time to, I think there needs to be more discussion, and Audra's group on Curtis Island that I've talked to before, that's one of the things we're talking about as well.
So in Audra's, I don't know if it was last meeting or 2 meetings ago, Audra requested that we research, or the Historic Resource Committee research what time period for Curtis Island. Is there anything that she's expecting from us in addition to what you got, like, do we need to formalize,
Yeah.
in addition to what you all have already to say, can we say, Audra, we really, for the reasons that, like you just mentioned, is that fulfill our.
No, I think the research isn't quite done, but I think, kind of the major things.
Nice.
Rhonda-
Well, we kind of have an idea of the chronology
Okay.
of a lot of it. But, some of this comes from other, secondary sources. So I, for one, have tried to look at logbooks, or they had one logbook and one vessel logbook. which is pretty boring, but, like what ships went by at what time,
Oh,
what
really?
day, yeah, and that's all it is, the whole thing. But the logbook of the activities of the lighthouse keeper was way more interesting. Because they kept track of all the maintenance and the buildings and
Yeah.
what they did and, that sort of thing. That was interesting. I've looked online to see if I can get those same logbooks from the National Archives, and they don't have them digital,
So you could
digitalized.
go to DC or the,
I could, but I haven't.
I'm not suggesting you should.
No, I could.
But in order for anyone to access, you'd have to be in person.
I believe so, because they're the actual logbooks.
Wow.
So it hasn't come to that yet. I would like to look at primary sources. The secondary sources are histories and like Roll Robinson and stories. Even the story about how it was named originally is kind of questionable. Could be just a legend.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's really gonna matter. It's, we're not writing a dissertation on.
Well, what's
it.
fascinating about 1911, and I fully support the recommendation in that the new building was, the new light tower and keepers was built in 1890 or so. So
Yeah,
they made like it was, and then in 1911, it was probably fully under, working and thriving. And as I was thinking about just now, the lighthouse keeper, because the files I was looking at had a lot in the book next, has a lot of the lighthouse lists by years of who was watching. And I believe in 1909 was Aldebert Norton to 1920. So he must have been there in 1911. And there's a really interesting photo, fun photo of him with his dog in that book. But his great
Aldebert
grandson.
Norton was there in 1911.
1911,
Yeah.
and his great grandson lives in Boothbay Harbor.
Oh,
And
that's
we've chatted
cool.
on the phone, because Aldebert lived, the reason that we connected to that, is Aldebert lived in the home that I'm living in now.
Oh, do they have
And
any?
so
Oh,
I reached out to Aldebert, so
you did?
I reached out to David Norton, and just interested to meet someone who had an ancestor that lived in our home, and he's very nice. I said, he may have some interest. I'm not, that we couldn't find things else, I mean, we already have.
Well,
But it could be an interesting.
when Elaine came to talk to us, she talked about making contact with families and that they often had documents and boxes of
Stories,
artifacts. Yeah.
He frequently likes lunch at Dots, so, I mean, I think he's David's up here, he grew, so Aldebert's son was Sidney, and then Sidney was the grandfather, so he would have been David's great grandfather. Who's, so he wouldn't, I don't know, given age, when people lived, I don't know if he would have ever met him, but he may have some interesting family
Yeah.
photos.
Yeah, photos, right.
Something like that. But
Oh, that's great.
yeah, I also read that there was a chicken house
Yeah.
that might have burned down.
Mhm.
That was
Did it burn
behind the
down? I
barn or
did
something.
see a reference to the chicken house, yeah.
And that they grew there were blueberries, raspberries, and strawberries on the island, which got me thinking if we did a
They're
planting.
probably still there, huh?
Yeah.
Raspberries on it.
Raspberries,
Yeah.
So I wanted to just mention one thing, though, although we don't have a lot of primary sources, the materials that are in the History Center that the Historic Resources Committee did years ago are really well done.
They are
I
well
mean,
researched.
It's a great resource. Kudos to the,
Rosalie,
Rosalie was on that committee. I wanted to mention that they did a fabulous
It
job.
looks like there was a display at some
Yeah.
point, and so there
It
was a
in the
lot
Picker
of
Room.
photos and documents and
Mhm.
so on, yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Rosalie, you were involved in putting all that together, weren't you? And it was for the celebration, when the town acquired the final tower.
Susan Sneed was working on it too.
We did have a nice exhibit, and not everything that was in that was kept in the, in the History Center because it belonged to private individuals. But quite a bit of the information about the transfer of the light from the Coast Guard and so on and so forth is in the archives. And we should put all this stuff together, including these boxes of material that have now come forward, and get and organize it appropriately. I think we just have a lot of disparate stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
For that, I mean, unless, I know Curzon will be a constant topic, but it seems like thank you for the update and all the research.
I think Mike
All
should
three
tell
of you.
them about your application for the 501(c)(3).
Oh, yeah.
This would be a good time.
Sure.
Well, so I'm a little confused on what our target is, because you need something written for the application of the 501(c), right?
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the targets is, we've got enough in terms of chronology and what was happening to write, to kind of rewrite a 2-page history, say, of it. And then those 2 pages of narrative can be, pictures can be added, and, it can become kind of a central piece to communicate out to potential donors. And some of the applications I'm filling out right now, it'll be helpful. And so that, to me, that's the early part of it. I think there still is a lot of history here that I would say through the next year or so, let's continue documenting it.
So we have a history for the application, we have a history for donors, and we have a history for restoration. Yes.
For what?
Restoration,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, okay. So,
The material that you all are talking about that was delivered to the Opera House, it's 2 boxes full.
it's, yeah, at least 2 boxes.
And
And there's binders of stuff, there's loose paper. I've spent maybe 30 minutes just prior to our meeting, and I only made it through 2 binders. And there's a lot of there's great photography and aerials. And there's a site plan a surveyed site plan from 1894, which is very,
That's useful.
helpful.
Mhm.
They actually even have prior, which is not sure how much this would be related. Well, they have the original light tower, the wooden white light tower. Photos of that, and the original keeper's house had 3 chimney stacks, so it's quite a big structure. I'm happy we're not going to rebuild that.
These boxes of material are in the Tucker room.
They are, so what would you consider that room?
It's a great,
near Janice's desk in the front office, but out toward the front window of the front office.
Oh, maybe we need to have a work session, maybe
Yeah,
just to look and see what all of this is. And it would be really nice if we were at the History Center with everything, but putting things together would be good, and trying to organize it into what's going to be useful for one purpose and what's going to be useful for another purpose if you're writing these histories up and so on. So maybe we could somehow have a work session looking through this stuff, and also reminding ourselves what's in the History Center, since we haven't looked at it for a long time.
I think we looked.
I think Rhonda and Mike and I have a pretty good idea what's in the History Center. We went through all of that stuff. So,
Because you started, I think one of the action plans last was to start an email with Rhonda as the lead.
I don't know what happened to that plan.
Oh, but it seems like you all have spent a lot of time since our last
Three of
meeting,
us,
the
yeah.
three of you.
Yeah,
And so maybe, I guess, should we?
It's on Google Docs. I could invite
Sure,
others, to,
but Rosalie, if since you have so much prior knowledge and if you're, want to join a work session, should we, I mean, how's best, should we schedule another one now? Should we?
sure.
Should we,
I'd be willing to go next week and have a look at things.
and then, or should we? Yeah, and then should we meet here, because Allison wants to keep these documents here for now? Should we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
and just spend time going through Dee Dee's box, should we do that as a
Mhm.
work session, just going through these boxes from Dee Dee?
maybe if this room is available, you can lay it out and kind of
Yeah,
sort it and.
okay,
Yeah. So the thing about meeting without a public access, I understand that that's the way things are going now, and we never had that for so many decades. But if that's the case, maybe we could call what we're going to do with all of these documents, organizing and so on. We'll call it a work session, and then do it at the History Center if it's available. If Ken says it's available, we could spread things out there. Either that or bring what we have at the History Center over to the Tucker Room and try to do it up there with the boxes that are at the town office. It just seems like when we do a work session, we're not going to be having to be in the public eye. We're going to be going through things and trying to organize things. And I think we could have a meeting very well without public access to do that.
I think it's a great idea, Rosalie.
well, if you could find out if they don't
Yeah.
mind us taking them out of the building, if they do, we can then do it
Meet
here.
here by
if-
four.
Whenever this room is available.
So who were they delivered to from?
They came from Dee
From
Dee Conover.
Dee Dee Conover to the town?
Yes,
And she
Well,
just,
the town doesn't really have an archives except what we have over at the History Center. I
Right.
mean, they've got them, I guess, in a place where, if they wanted to start an archives, they could organize the stuff and put it into files, but they don't have one right now. So the library and the Walsh Center are town property. So I think we need to clarify whether those documents, where they will end up or where they should be stored.
Yeah,
In a climate controlled space.
I hope, you'd hope so. Is there? What's best to sketch, do we want to determine a date or time now, or do we want to, should I ask Janice what's available and then or just do it over email, or what do you all think?
I think you need to, we need to have Allison at a meeting and explain to her what we think should happen to all of this stuff, because I think,
From a storage, yeah, I think we
Yeah.
could definitely have well, we should definitely have and I think Allison would give so much color as to so many things that I'm not even privy to,
because if we just say, Will, you need to speak to Allison, about
yeah.
where this stuff should be stored, I don't think she gets the full weight of what is important. And what's important is treating this material like it's,
It is archival material, isn't it?
I mean, we're making all of our decisions today based on this material, so it's really the foundation of our future. So I'm all for having a larger storage, and maybe that becomes, I think it's a very healthy conversation to have,
Mhm.
and we can see some immediate success in just the Curtis Island files, but there's obviously other files of all the other historic.
and that is one, if you look at the role of this committee, the town documents is a part that's, this committee is responsible for either archiving or protecting.
Yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
well, I'll definitely mention that.
I,
And put that on our,
I wonder what else, I mean, I know the old tax records are still here, but I don't know what else is stored here in the town office. Does anybody else? I mean,
There used to be a ton of maps, which I knew about,
Mhm.
and there should be. I mean, there used to be files of who is responsible for each house, and I just wonder,
Oh, wow.
you know, whether they go back. You know, I mean, we're able to access them in file drawers,
yeah,
Mhm.
and I haven't gone into anything for a long time.
Mhm.
Maybe,
we'll definitely,
Jeannie knows a lot about stuff.
Well,
Jeannie
she
Molly.
does, okay.
maybe we could
Roberta.
just have a meeting in the basement and do a review of what's there, just so that we all know what's being talked about.
Perfect.
And then proceed to something significant.
Does sometime next week work for any of you, or what is, Rosalie or Chris, or both Chris's, is there any?
We
If
just
you
look
get
at,
the ice out of my way, then I'm fine with it.
should we just look at the same time a week from now? You know, next Thursday afternoon?
Sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds good.
They could do that.
Does that work?
I'm sorry, your question was just about your boxes, not the whole town.
Okay, well, let's plan, we'll plan for that, and then I'll confirm over email that the room's available. But we won't need, Rosalie, to your point, any of this technology stuff. If you aren't able to make it, totally okay. If you can make it, then. you can
Would
make it.
be very good if Allison were there, since she knows all the workings of the machinery and all that.
It seems to me we've got kind of a couple of things. One is just organizing the information and then digitizing it at some point. And you're gonna be better off digitizing after you've got some kind of an order set up or some type of a structure.
What I do with my boxes is go through them, make a list of the kind of topics that are in them.
Mhm.
I have a card in front, and then if you did that and then started organizing them with this sort of initial run through
Mhm. Yeah.
roughly what's in there,
Mhm.
and you think of an organizing plan.
Yeah, that's. You just create categories, I guess, of
Well, I start out with just the subjects,
subjects.
and then
What's
I
in
mean,
this box?
mostly I've categorized already, but not always. Sometimes it's just kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So that's where having like a shelf list of books, which are maybe random. And then, but then, you know, you de-randomize them.
maybe we could actually have that as a goal of organizing these files next Thursday. And that way we're set, reviewing them,
Yeah, if Rosalie's talking about spreading them out on a table, I think that's.
Mhm.
Okay. Perfect.
Or are you talking about meeting at the Opera House?
Yeah, I was thinking, just because the boxes are here, we could meet in the French room, or I guess the Tucker room, or anywhere where there's space that we could have all of us, and we can move and shuffle documents around. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think, yeah, we could do that. We're not putting it together with the material that's already organized at the History Center yet, but we need to know what we're going to be doing with, what's important in this box material. I can meet for an hour on Thursdays, the way I'm doing this time, but I turn into a pumpkin at 5 o'clock, so I don't know whether Thursday is the best time, but Tuesday's not not for us anymore, I guess. So,
Oh, wait, do we typically meet on Tuesday? I guess we typically meet on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So should we do Tuesday instead of Thursday? Or, I mean, I know we're not, I don't know. What do you?
I don't know. I'm having trouble right now because it feels like we have a big project with Curtis Island going on. And then we have a big project with trying to sort all the materials.
Yeah,
And I don't know, I feel overwhelmed. And I know Mike feels overwhelmed because he's working on getting his committee together, his board of directors, he's working on the application for the 501(c). And it's like, I don't want to be sorting stuff in boxes and trying to coordinate it with the History Center and what might be elsewhere. What if we just look at those boxes and see what's in them and then decide, have a
so
workshop
don't even store
later
it, yeah.
to put them all together?
Perfect.
'Cause
We'll just review what's there and then we'll worry
Yeah.
about the storage and organization.
yeah,
as
would
a-
that work with everybody, just to see what's in there, what can we use, make a list if we want to, of what's in there, and then worry about how we're gonna coordinate it later.
That sounds great.
I
Yes,
feel
I-
tired
no, I-
thinking about
I agree. I would look at them with an eye for the Curtis Island effort.
Just the night,
Yes,
if anything's
right.
not around 1911, we just say,
Yeah,
we'll look at you later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just look at what's there,
what's
Okay.
there,
Okay,
and then we'll say, then we'll take up the issue of
your card.
why do we have stuff in the town office and the History
Right,
Center?
that's a
and
separate
blah, blah,
thing.
blah. Is that okay with you, Rosalie?
Yeah, sure. Well, now are we Tuesday or Thursday next week? Or is it next week or next month?
If Tuesday is our regular day, then maybe we should keep it to Tuesday.
you want to do does Tuesday work?
Yeah, Tuesday's good for me.
Okay.
Tuesday at 4.
The
Well,
24th.
check with.
Good here.
Oh, Chris, how's Tuesday work?
Tuesday, the 24th.
Yes.
I may not be able to make it on Tuesday, but that shouldn't decide anything.
Chris, how about,
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with any time. So
okay,
Okay.
well, Chris, we hope you can make it. And if not, maybe, we'll count on you to make it for the organization. That sounds awesome, and I'll just confirm that we can have this room, but I'll email out. Definitely tomorrow, just because I don't want to wait till Monday to, just for everyone's schedule.
And if Allison can't make it, it's okay, we just need to know what's in the boxes,
Yeah,
so.
no, I think she would be really happy, whether she can or not, that we're looking at it,
Mhm.
and once we do look at it, then we can know how to best then act on the organization, whether it be digitizing or whatever. So I think that sounds really healthy.
would it be really beneficial if we could get in the basement and see where since we're dealing with all the files at one time or another, how they're being stored and how they're being used and that, if we're
Another time.
thinking of transferring stuff over to the Walsh Center, et cetera. So
We were thinking about moving things.
I
in
like
here.
it now. It's a nice basement.
Are things, do you have space in your house?
I didn't get that.
What? Well, unless Mike, do you want to talk more Curtis Island?
Sure, I'll just be quick. So,
Because you've been doing a lot.
so through Audra's small group that's kind of thinking about what are we gonna do? What's the town's role? What needs to happen on the island? We've decided we are going to put together a 501(c)(3), which is a nonprofit organization, tax exempt organization that people can donate money to. And so I've been working on that. I thought it pretty well done. We're going to call it the Friends of Curtis Island. I've got a website identified, a whole lot of different things. I'm trying to secure the name and make sure that's okay, but I don't think there are many Friends of Curtis Islands around the country. Written the bylaws, articles of incorporation. So it's been kind of a little bit of a learning curve for me, and I'm meeting with a neighbor who is a lawyer on Saturday morning to go over the documentation before it gets submitted. So then it will be really a separate freestanding organization from the town. And our discussions will be, what is the long-term town relationship with the 501c3? And in a meeting with Audra last week, you know, the money that we hope to raise to really bring these facilities on Curtis Island up to, you know, restored and historically sensitively restored. The money we raise probably won't come in unless there's a huge donor right on the front end to say, here's all the money you need, and that's all we need to do. But you know, it'll take time. So we've had some discussions around the town putting in the budget for this year enough money to redo all of the roofs and really all of the exterior of the caretaker's house. So all the rot that we found, all of that replaced, new clapboards, new paint, and trying to really preserve this caretaker's house this year. So the town, we're going to be asking from the town to put up some money, or Audra will do that as they get into the budgeting process. We're getting some estimates on what that will all cost. So we can see some good movement. There's still a lot that has to happen. But ultimately, the 501c3 will have a relationship or an agreement with the town which owns the island in terms of who's going to be hiring contractors. Is it the town, or is it the 501c3? And that's really a matter of kind of decision making between the 501c3 board and one other question I have for you all to be thinking about. If you know of people who would make great board members as this kicks off, and thinking of having probably 5 to 7, not a large board, but maybe up to 7 people. But if you know people with either a lot of interest, a specific area of one area or a couple of areas that are critical are fundraising, communications, and who's the other one? Oh, accounting. You know, and just how do you manage the money that comes through? I'm going to be talking to some of the banks and see what services they might provide or give. Yeah, so, and I think today we'll have a federal identification number, which doesn't mean it's tax exempt yet, but it means you can tell people we have applied and hopefully we'll be getting it. We also will come up with a strategy in terms of how do you fundraise, instead of just going out and asking your friends to donate whatever they can. Looking at kind of an overall approach to it, because you can't, you know, we just don't want to get out ahead of ourselves here, and we want to do it right and tastefully and appropriately and honestly.
Mike?
I
Yeah.
think we should.
Yes.
Yeah, so Mike, do we have the blessing, or do you have the blessing of the select board to go ahead with this 501c3?
We have the blessing, I suppose, indirectly through Audra. And she was going to mention it last night and I didn't hear it in the town meeting. So I'm going to be going back with Audra and seeing, I think she's been kind of keeping them informed that, you know, this is what we're doing. You know, we dealt just recently with a lot of shingles blowing off the roof, and it's really clear that there's some critical work that has to be done. So I'll double check with Audra and just make sure, but I know she and the subgroup that is working with her, she's given complete blessings to move in this direction.
That's really interesting. shingles blowing off the roof, because that is happening other places up the coast with that particular storm. Is this more recent or older?
No, this is the big storm we had, what, just before New Year's?
Right,
And-
right. I know of other properties and I have never heard of shingles blowing off the roof before, so
There was,
it makes me think, I wonder if we need to be doing something different with putting those shingles on.
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna do it again.
when they were put on, what we found is they were put on correctly for residential, but not for something like what's as severe as where that is located.
Yeah, this was a barn that I knew about. Yeah. Further down east.
So instead of 3 nails per shingles, it's going to be 8 nails, and they're stainless steel nails, and there's a whole technique for doing it. Yeah. Good point.
Mike, I was reading, as I was reading through these documents, you might already know this, but it looked like in 1998, I know fundraising will go more for private donations, not just grants, but it looked like they received a $15,000 grant from the National Maritime, there's a National Maritime Heritage Grant
Mhm.
from the National Park Services.
Mhm.
Is that one that you?
That's
Is it-
another thing
that's
that
another-
needs
So
to.
they, I don't know what, we could go into more, but I saw that,
Mhm.
and obviously we need much more than 15,000, but.
Mhm. And that may have been for painting, or it may have been for new roofs, but
Because it is nationally registered,
it's on the
would be
national.
considered a
register.
national park, or not, no, I guess, right, or that's why so maybe that's a part of the
It's a
strategy you talk to
Mhm.
is individuals, businesses,
Mhm.
public grants, or.
I just have a couple of other items.
Yeah.
Are we ready to move on to this island?
I'll be there saying goodbye to people. So I'll see you next week, 24th, 4 o'clock.
Is there any, before you leave, was there anything else that you wanted to share?
No, I'm just looking forward to having some work sessions. And seeing what this material is and talking more about the ins and outs of this collaboration between the 501c3 and the town as an owner of the island. You know, I really think we need to talk about that too. It's something that Mike has been doing so much spade work on, and I just admire it greatly, but I don't really understand how it would work, even though I looked at all the information from the presentation that was made here by the Burnt Island people. I'm still not quite clear how the legal part works.
Yeah, I think ultimately there will be a legal document that says this is the role of the 501c3 in relationship to the town, in relationship to the buildings on the island. And all of those will be nailed down. I mean, we're really clear that, and that we're just not ready for that yet, but it will definitely be hammered out probably sooner than later. I mean, probably over the next couple of months.
I just don't want to see you spending so much precious time and effort on this and then have the select board be, nasty about it in some way. I want to be sure that that we're going along without anything being misunderstood by anybody.
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
And I'll touch base actually with Audrey over the next couple of days and just make sure we're all set here and.
But
When
you've
she
been
was-
meeting with her every couple of weeks with her and whoever, else, her advisory committee.
Mhm.
So,
I did mention it to Allison today, just in raw excitement. And she just raved. Her response, I believe, was just, Mike does so much. And so, in some way, I felt that was supportive. Now thinking back on it, it seemed very supportive. But we should, Rosalie, you're right, get
Yeah,
a,
and we've,
approval needed. I don't know if it is even needed.
well, I'm working on a presentation to the select board. And we haven't gone into the details of it yet, but I'm building it now. And that was one of the things that Audra said, you know, come talk to us about what the plan is. I'll keep them informed as to that we're moving in this direction. And I know recently with the fixing, the repairing of the roof, I'm sure she shared that with the select board because there's some money involved in it. And
I'm sure they would be thrilled because it takes a lot of the liability of the capital improvement off the town.
Is there a
Well,
question?
See you next week.
Okay, see you, Rosalie, thank you.
Bye.
But that's just an opinion of mine, so I don't know that.
All right, Rosalie.
Is there a similar situation that has taken place in the past where there's been a project funded outside of?
oh, yeah, I mean, there's
Friends of Mount Batty.
Friends of Mount Batty, or there's the
Snowball?
Snowball,
Is there?
the Opera House. I'm not sure if the Opera House is a separate company. I'm just,
Oh, but they do have a friends group, yeah, the opera house.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of examples of Burnt Coat Island or Burnt Coat Lighthouse on Seal Island.
Mhm.
Has, the town owns the lighthouse and the Friends Group
They
has
have,
organized it. We've been talking with
they've
them.
worked out the legal side
Yeah,
of it. And-
yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's my first experience, I think, with a Friends group, as you asked that, is I think back was living in Boston. And the public garden has the Friends of the Public Garden. And every year they, you know, through private donations, they do they're charged the planting and it's my favorite. I don't know if any of you have been to the public garden in Boston, but it's just beautiful. And so I think, as I think about this Friends group, it's a group that once roles are played out, that I imagine the group will continue to give time and resources ongoing to the Curtis Island, not just a one and done restoration. Is that right, Mike? Is that how you see
Yeah,
it?
I
Okay.
believe, I mean, it's to be, history will tell, but the goals of the mission of the group is to write the history of it, to make sure we know the history, and we've organized in subparts of that is what we talked about today, the documentation and
Mhm.
all of that. The second is to raise the funds to restore in a historic preservation mode the buildings and the structures. And then the third is to create a long-term, I wouldn't call it an endowment, I didn't use that word, but
Support.
long-term plan for making sure it stays up to date, and there's always sufficient resources. So when you hit a 20 or 30-year mark, you've got money that's ready to go to put it on a new roof, you know, so. And we've been so lucky here, we've been so lucky compared to a lot of these light stations. The Coast Guard left and they sat vacant for 20 years. And the animals got in, it rained, they were pretty much destroyed. So we're just so fortunate that this has been preserved and well, you know, stabilized. But there are things that happen over time, like the rot that we found this year, and that just need to be taken care of periodically. So this is our wonderful opportunity to refresh it, restore it, and hey, it's ready for the next 100 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It seems like such an honor, privilege to be involved to start this, because for such a historic building. I mean, we're talking built over 100 years, you know. Anyway, Chris, sorry, I know I interrupted.
No, no. Can you refresh my memory? The rock you found? I don't, what are you referring to?
The rot, so he's asking where you found rot.
Oh, rot. I think you said rock.
Oh,
So,
that's it.
There was a bunch of rot on their windowsills, there's clapboard.
Yeah.
I thought you said rock.
Yeah. Yeah, we discovered some this summer in one of the.
A lot of exterior,
Some of the sills.
yeah.
Well,
Sorry. Well,
before we close this discussion, I just want to say aside, looking at information in the National Archives on coastal areas, looking up Curtis Island. I found what's called war diaries. If you want to be entertained, there are, one in particular I looked at was December 1944 along the coast of Maine, was a map with all the locations of German submarines, pinned on the map. Up by Bar Harbor, Rockland, all along the coast, Portsmouth. And they've been declassified, so it's kind of fun to look at.
And those are confirmed sightings? Those are confirmed sightings?
What's that?
Are they-
Were those confirmed sightings?
Confirmed.
Yes, by most of the informants were fishermen, anonymous informants.
And Mike was saying that Curtis Island was a
At a tower.
tower to look for these Germans, like, was that part of the?
Well, I was looking for something like that, but it seemed that most of the sightings were
Water.
on the water by fishermen who then reported that
Reported to.
they had seen lights or
Wow.
they had seen something in the water that shouldn't have been there.
Wow. War diaries.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so much Curtis Island.
Okay, so
No,
Yeah.
that's a good discussion.
Yeah, it was fabulous.
Yeah.
I know more to come on Tuesday. Do you?
I have just a couple of things. I tickled Richard Remsen again today with an email asking him, how are you coming on the plaques? Because we've had 3 plaques ordered for quite a while. And I just wanted to report that he didn't answer me back today, but we're waiting for 3.
Is Richard on is he the Mount Batty or is he the?
No,
house
Richard is the forge, the
Oh, for
guy
the
who
house
runs the
plaques.
forge
Okay.
for the house plaques. So those of you who are waiting for your house plaque, I don't know, Richard will eventually do them. A couple of times he's told me, I'm gonna cast those this weekend, and then I don't hear from him. And I feel kind of bad because 2 people are on the committee here who are waiting for plaques.
Don't feel bad. I read that the original design, which Rosalie was here, was created by Rosalie's husband,
Yes,
which is still the design
Yeah.
today.
yes.
Very cool.
Yeah, it is cool. So anyway, that was one thing I wanted to report. So, and then the other good news was that Maple Street Design, Joe Rosillo contacted me because he's going to be doing a renovation for 10 High Street. And they asked if we had a picture of what that house looked like when it had a front door. Right now, it doesn't have a front door, a historic picture of it. And I was able to get one from the 1937 tax files from Ken. And I took it up there and they were thrilled but I think we've made a really good friend there because Joe came with an application for demolition on Chestnut Street for a back shed area. And I think, just for him introducing himself to the committee and the committee meeting him, and he had a good experience, so they reached out and asked us, so anything we can do in the community for connecting with people and helping, I think really is good. So I was pleased. I wanted to report.
So that was 10 High Street they had previously a demolition permit to get rid of
A different house on Chestnut, but now this is a different project he's working on.
it's the Maple Street design.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
great. So we could,
Yeah,
what a great,
connection.
town connection that we connected with a contractor and designer on
Right.
2 separate projects.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
So I don't know that he's going to demolish anything at 10 High Street, probably not, but they were just asking, hey, can you help us with what did that house look like?
Are they on Maple Street, these people?
no, they're up over French and Braun.
Oh, okay.
Their office is up over French and Braun. And then what was the other thing I was gonna say? Oh, the other thing is, I contacted, Michael Goebel-Bain because someone had asked, gee, I have a historic home and I'd like to do some updating, you know, for the 21st century, maybe some panels. What does the Secretary of the Interior suggest if you need to bring your house with
Yeah.
new
Make it energy
technology,
efficient.
new energy efficiency, thank you, energy efficiency. And Michael sent me some good information, and I'd be, for the committee, and I'd be glad to send it to each of you if you'd like to have it. One of them is a 43-page document on sustainability. I think I brought it, but I don't know where it is. And so just know that we have this resource if you want it, or if you want to look at it, that's fine. I think the first one is called Illustrated Guidelines on Sustainability for Rehabilitating
That's the
Historic
green
Houses.
group with the,
Yeah,
those.
and what it just gives suggestions
Yeah.
for
Oh, that's fabulous.
for doing updating to your historic buildings. And this one is a 43-page document, but there are two sections. One is on roof panels and one is on sustainability. Anyway, if you are interested in it, or if anybody asks you, oh, I have a historic home, we can send them this information, okay?
I
Just,
think that's fabulous, and I know that Allison has somewhat tasked the Conservation Commission to loop in energy, because the Energy and Resource or Energy Committee is no longer active.
Yeah,
And so if historic can, if we can help to educate the community on energy related to your home and a historic renovation, that's,
Mhm,
I think,
that's really good.
that's
needed.
a start.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
That's
all of
fabulous.
this is like, the chapters are like solar technology, wind power, roofs, site features, daylighting.
Do you think, would it be okay to even make, if the
Send that to
town
Allison.
had copies, just to keep in the town
Oh,
office?
sure.
If someone were to come by and
Absolutely,
look for a resource on
sure.
something, okay.
I'll send it to you.
That picture is these trays of sedums, and
Mhm.
they get them in different colors and they can kind of mix and match, and they're very tolerant of both dry and wet.
So I
These
told,
particular plants.
I think that's, yeah. I told a couple people about this, but anyway, I told him, I told Michael Goebel-Bain, who's our connection, that you would probably be calling him at some point,
Okay.
because I
Yeah.
introduced you as the new chair, and I was calling just because I knew who to ask for
So
the
did he-
information.
Write that.
No, he sent me the
He sent it,
links. He sent me 3.
And Michael
links.
again is,
He's the National Register Coordinator for Historic Preservation Commission in Augusta.
wow,
And so when we nominate anything from this area to go on the National Register, like the Camden Herald Building, we actually have to go through Augusta because we are not a commission. We can't make an
Right.
application.
okay.
So Michael sends our applications.
And he was asking for resources from us.
No, I was asking.
you were
him.
asking.
I was asking him what he
He asked
had.
with us. Well, it'd be really interesting to see what someone at the state level is distributing too, and see how much of it. 'Cause, putting a roof like that is a significant renovation. It'd be nice to see if there's some more simple.
Oh, there are.
Okay.
There are lots of
Yeah,
good
that's
ideas. No, they're great ideas.
That's for cities and
Yeah.
big flat roofs.
I love it. I hope what he's distributing is very Maine and Midcoast specific. So that it's achievable and residential, not.
Well, the good thing about this, it shows you correct things to do and incorrect things. It
Okay.
gives
Well,
you
they say recommended and not
Not
recommended, yeah.
Okay.
recommend.
But I think for the committee, for our committee, that being aware of what they recommend and what they don't recommend
Mhm.
in historic areas with houses, we generally want to maintain the streetscape. So how do what do we think about solar panels on roofs? Because that's a little different. But there are other options. People can buy into solar farms and, you know, they don't have to have the cells right on their property.
Basically, what they say in here, if you're going to put a solar panel on a historic building, it should be
Where you can't.
where
see
they
it.
can't see it
Yeah.
from the street, or or it doesn't hit you in the face from the
Right.
street.
Right.
Yeah,
Just wanted you to know that.
it is fascinating.
Mhm.
Well, the designs of solar panels is gonna be changing anyway, and they've talked about shingles.
That's what I'm
So
hoping for.
That would be cool.
It's
Yeah.
already out there.
They're already
Tesla
out.
makes them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, I just knew they existed.
I mean, it would be great to figure out how to maintain the historic building,
Yeah.
yet have all these benefits.
Yeah,
Mhm. That's all I have.
Thank you. Do we want to chat at all? I know we chatted on the Chestnut Street tour last week.
Oh.
And how we felt like it was such a great job, and we were all thrilled with it, but I think
Thanks.
where we left it was, how do we think about next steps in printing and budget items? Like, do we want to chat all about that?
I do. I
Okay.
want to suggest that I go
Okay.
and do it because I need to know what their system is, what kind of files they demand, and if we want to have an accordion type of fold out, then I have to rearrange
Yeah.
in my program to make it like that. And how do I have to give it to them? So I have a lot to talk to them about. And so
If
I
you need
think
help
I'll just
with-
go to, what is it, Adventure?
I have not. spoken to anyone.
Advertising.
Yes, right. We
Is
were
it
gonna
next- is it
try
across from,
there.
Like Little Biscuit, is that or where it's,
It's across from the gas station, right?
Okay. Okay, great.
So I'll just go because I need to know the details.
Well, let us know if there's. And then the next thing that kind of looked into that was review budgetary items.
Mm.
I have no idea how the budget request or budget cycle works. I'm imagining I think it's maybe March, February, March, when the town meets to review budget. So just thinking, not that we need to determine the budget today, but just thinking, and maybe this is a conversation that we obviously, I think, need Allison here because she knows of a budget or knows the budget closer than I do, even letting us know that we have budget to digitize files. And if we haven't done that yet, could we apply that budget to something else like, Chris, I don't know. But is there, I guess, and obviously the printing of the Chestnut Street would be a budget item, I would
Right.
think, so that's how but I guess, is there any, aside from Chestnut Street, is there anything else you want to chat? And then if not, is there any budget items that you guys want to chat about?
Just
Or should we
think,
table that for a later day?
well, I think we should think about, what might we need money for? And one thing that I would like to see people do is everybody to go to some kind of workshop, some kind of education.
Sure.
And we put that in our budget before and we haven't used it. But sometimes the state does do workshops or conferences for historic preservation people. I think we should put money in there for that, like $200 or $300 to send committee members to conference.
fabulous.
Yeah. I think Judy McGurk and I have been to
Yeah.
some in the past. Not recently, nobody has been, and it's so important. If it's out there offered, we should be going.
I mean, that sounds, I think that makes complete sense to me, and I think if I were to attend an event, just thinking, I would feel the expectation to share that knowledge. And whether it be
Oh, yeah.
just within the committee and publicly, or share it even with an article to the general public, and so I think that would.
and if it became
Very
an
nice.
article, then, or a report, then that would be awareness of historic.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
Speaking of reports, I am going to put my Mountain Street School out there for the newspaper if they care to publish it, but I've been waiting for the plaque so we could have a picture of the long funeral home people receiving the plaque. So that's one thing that's holding me up, but anyway. Just
Yeah.
reminded me of that when you said article, we should be doing more of that.
And then I think of Chestnut Street walking tour, I'll just write that for
Mhm.
budget, not that we need to determine what it is, and then. When I was looking in the. PowerPoint and review of last year. There was the fire district signage, have we? Put that, do we want to budget to that?
No,
We had that in our budget.
oh, yeah, and what
Every
I,
year we carry it over.
So that's in the budget.
what I want to make sure is that 8,000 for transcribing isn't the budget that the Historic Resources Committee has, that's been kind of
Right.
preserved
Oh,
year
that's
after
a good
year.
point. That's a good point, because when I checked last year and said, how much money do we have left in our budget if we want to do printing? They told us we had $7,200 and something dollars, so maybe that's the 7,000 she's referring
Is the
to.
total budget.
That we haven't
Not
spent.
just the dip. Okay, so she's paying for it.
And,
Uh,
and some of that is going for plaques and signs and,
Yeah,
So some of that money that is already allocated, so we need to figure out what's already in there
exactly.
and what might be new.
okay.
Okay,
I'll send you a form letter that I've used before, which says, could you please carry over this, the amount from last year that we didn't spend to Jody Hanson,
okay.
the finance person, and she just carries it over. But I think we should specifically say, we're gonna spend our money this year, so much on plaques, so much on education,
Yeah.
so much on printing. And then if we don't, we can move it around.
Okay, perfect.
What else do you think we might spend money on? I mean,
Well, if we had new, Jacobs Avenue, so any cost around around
Application.
doing research for a historic district, a new historic district.
Yeah,
We
what
got
is-
2 or 3 that we were thinking of in the past,
yeah, but we
Elm Street.
decided not to go ahead with Elm Street.
And I was hoping Ann would be here because I want to know what is the goal with that Jacobs Avenue research? What are we going to do with it?
She wants to have a historic district, apply for a historic district.
Okay.
So,
Oh, okay,
And it doesn't cost anything
okay.
Okay.
to apply, but expenses, I don't know what.
yeah, Ann's doing all the work, and we could have hired a historian and paid someone to do that. So it's been nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, I read a little bit through it, but it would be nice to hear from her of what she's still, because I know she said very beginning, but I haven't not ever submitted or seen, well, maybe I've seen the Chestnut Street and there's a lot of detail for each individual home. And so you're right, there's probably a lot more research. She's done a lot already, but
Yeah,
it's fairly extensive in the Chestnut Street one.
but it's small though,
Right.
only what, 10 houses about? And I read it as well, so Ann, if you're listening,
I don't know if there's a waiting room, but. I was
well,
wondering if
maybe she'll watch us later. So I just looked at the houses and the people's names and I looked them up in the census. And I was really impressed with their effort to make what we would consider today affordable housing. Because the people who lived there, like the first guy on the list, I think was Arthur Melvin, he was a postal worker. And so I looked him up in the census, that's how I know that. And then in 1910, he's listed as renting. And then his house was built in 1913, and then 1920, he's listed as owning a home. And I think that is like the real reward to this whole effort,
Yeah.
aside from the architectural history part where,
It's sort of
people
like-
could buy kits to build houses. Wish we had them now.
It's sort of like Ford and the cheap Ford that the workers could afford to
Yes,
buy.
there was a
And there was a
clerk,
housing
Yes.
attempt with those kit houses actually, which are
Yeah.
related to the Jacob Street houses.
yeah, so I think that's the historic
So
significance
that's,
of this.
yeah, which I
Yeah.
think is interesting, because I feel like most people, when they think of historic districts, they think of the big grand captain's homes and
Exactly,
stuff like that, where
exactly.
This is actually looking at it.
And the
in-
social history.
So-
Right.
Okay.
And that had
Yeah.
such a tremendous economic impact when people
Right.
could afford their own home.
And those houses, that style, they're right across the country and done at that particular period. I mean, it's really recognizable. And in Oregon, where my daughter was living in an area of those same houses, they actually were so pleased about it. They were sort of building them out into the northeast, Portland, Oregon. And they put the name of the street and the numbers on the corner, so you knew in the cement of the sidewalk. I mean, there's just.
Wow.
It's really,
I'm looking forward to reading what she wrote. I haven't read it yet, or what she gathered.
Yes, right, yeah, yeah.
I think that's the angle she was going for a little bit, was that what made this unique was that they were, I don't know if she was thinking affordable, but they were for the working class.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they
yeah.
were quite modern at the time, you know, the designs for that, modern for that time.
This is like 1913.
Kind of a fresh new look.
Yeah, and often there were details inside that, didn't see in earlier houses, the New England Standard farmhouse or whatever.
Right.
No. Must have been fun.
It's a lot of work to dig the history of that area. She's
It is, I mean,
Stuck with it.
I just looked in the census just for the heck of it to see who these people were. And so I think there's a lot to, and I was thinking along the lines of the National Register and how they give a little history of each
Yeah.
house. So he was a postal worker, somebody else was clerk in a cigar store. I mean, just everyday people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she'll be glad to have that support
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
talk with her.
yeah, I think it's great, and I think we need a tour.
Yes, that'd be really fun to actually,
Once she gets it all together, we should make another pamphlet.
Mhm.
yeah.
I've been having fun with the district schools. I worked on those again today at the History Center, trying to identify the 20 district schools, and I just can't wait to get it all together so I can share it with someone. But I still have a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
When were those 20 established as with that number?
With that number, I can't remember which report, which town report,
Approximately.
like 1880,
Yeah. okay,
1884.
okay, yeah, because they wouldn't have had that many
No.
probably before.
The next time you go to the History Center, before you go into the History Center, the 1856 map that's there,
Oh, yeah.
just look for the little black dots that
Yeah.
says school. And you will be amazed. There are at least 20,
Wow.
like out on Barnestown Road
Yeah.
and
Oh, no, I wouldn't, because they're all walkable.
1856.
Walkable and probably small.
But I was surprised
You
that
know,
they
the-
showed up on a map.
The topos, you can't get topos anymore, which is just criminal. And they have a little school symbol, you can see the older ones, I mean, not as old as 1860, but they were very consciously, and they're all over the place. Because that was when they were all still walking.
So Pat, is the Bramhall School on that 1856 map?
You know, I didn't look at that
Yeah.
today.
Yeah,
I didn't look at it, but
probably not. It was probably torn down by then. I don't know.
It was still there in the 1894.
Oh, it was,
I think
okay.
so. But the one that Ken and I were surprised at, there's one mentioned in 50-something in the Camden Directory on Commercial Street. Now, Commercial Street's that little street that
Tiny
goes
little-
down with Cappy's on the left
Oh,
and it said there was a school a very early school on Commercial Street. We can't, neither one of us were
Wasn't there in
stumped.
24, that's for sure, where the model is, you know.
Yeah, anyway,
Iron.
Wow.
thank you for letting
That
me
would be
digress.
fascinating, so the schools, I mean, I know. The one in Rockport, just because by the library, just because it's for sale,
Mhm.
and I think they wrote that it's a schoolhouse. And they're listening,
Yeah, actually, yeah,
Where
looking at
is
that. old-
it's. If
By
you're
the
coming
library?
on, from the Aldermere side, so Camden side of Rockport, it's on the same side of the street as the library,
Mhm.
and I think it's not directly next to it, but.
is it that very antique looking house that is set back just a little bit with a fence? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, it looks like it's full,
it
actually.
does,
With a fence.
There's
yes,
a little fence in
little
the
front
front.
yard,
Yeah,
It's like a quarter cape or something.
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's adorable.
Well, see, when they mentioned these 20 schools, they were also counting West Rockport, Rockville.
Each place that you had a tiny
Yeah.
mill would have
So that might have been one of the ones that I haven't found yet.
Simon's Corner. I'm sure there would be
Yeah.
one there. Okay.
Well, are there any
Anyway.
other additions to what we chatted about?
Oh my gosh.
Individual updates anyone wants to share?
Well, the only other thing I did this week is I finally put all my papers and write-up together on Ezra Bramhall and gave it to Ken, so he's got that in the,
Oh,
History
he didn't
library
tell me
now.
that.
yeah. You know, like his whole
And-
life timeline and,
Do you-
and, you know, traced some of his descendants, because
Can you send it to me electronic?
I don't think so. Well, I maybe the document where I summarize things, yeah, but I gave him a lot of papers, you know, like censuses and
That's so
I
nice.
want to see
death
that.
certificates and all that stuff.
Why don't you write a newspaper article?
Okay.
Did you find that?
Really?
Other, I recognize the school name, is that his?
Well, that's what we were
contributing.
trying to figure out, because we knew there was this, he had a shop on Atlantic Avenue. He built
Interesting.
And there was a
boats
school
and
there.
machines, and he was a very capable guy. He was also an artist, and he painted local scenes very well, even though he was self-taught. And we knew that on Atlantic Avenue was this Bramhall School,
Mhm.
but we don't know what it was.
What type of school it was, or?
Yeah,
Well, it was a district school.
yeah.
It was a small school, yeah.
And was it just called Bramhall because it was on his property? Because he had his shop there.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah,
It shows up on a couple of lists that I
Yeah.
have. Yeah. But I think it was his workshop was that long workshop and there was a building right in front of it that looks like a house, and I think it was probably right there. In that house. Don't you? Since it was
I
on.
have to look at the photograph, but the house is up by the road, right?
Up by
Yeah,
the road,
yeah.
right on the street.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, so could be. Because there were like 3 buildings.
You definitely
Leading.
should write an article.
Add more to your plate.
We don't have Barbara Dyer anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
okay, one of these days, I'll look in your folder anyway.
Chris, or-
Uh,
is there anything
Just
that-
some quick little thing. You mentioned conferences, and I'm sure we can do a much more thorough look, but I just took a little peek around here. And the American Historical Association just had their annual meeting last week. But I'm sure, that might be something to look at. But the,
Where was it?
what's that? It
Where was
was in Philadelphia. And then coming up in July is the Society of American Archivists National Meeting, July 22nd in Washington, D.C.
Huh?
The other thing, we talked about potential budgetary things. I don't know if archiving software is something we should be thinking about. But if we know that we've got projects ahead where we are trying to index a lot of material and preserve it, there's really good archiving software that museums use. And I don't know if we already have that through the town or the library, but something like that might be a really interesting way to organize this material and digitize it and, have it accessible to public, and you can, it's set up for museum quality type access. So
That's an amazing, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah,
My guess is that Allison's, this is just a guess, is saving it in the folder somewhere. So we should definitely bring up art, and I would imagine the library might have some experience with that
Well,
because of the,
Ken probably has a
Camden
way to keep track of
yeah,
all these things.
so we should definitely bring that up.
It's
I was just looking at a piece of software called Preservica, and it looks pretty cool. And it's used by a lot of museums and college libraries and what have you, but it's looks like a pretty nice interface and way of organizing photographs, historical records, and accessing text, what have you. So it might be something to look into.
But a lot easier, I imagine that probably would help to organize the.
I think we should put for an owl, now that we're talking about this.
Well, there might already be one too, but
Yeah.
if not, we should put for one.
Yeah. we
And
should
an owl, yeah, we'll put an
Buy
owl.
an owl for the library.
What do you mean? Yeah, even though
For
they have
meetings.
one, it wouldn't hurt to have one, an upstairs one. I don't know, see if the library.
Who stole the owl?
The only thing that and you all probably know this, is that, for some reason I woke up asking myself, how was Camden named Camden? And I think I discovered that it was named after in England, there was a chair,
Earl of Camden.
the Earl of Camden. And I
Yeah,
think-
there's
is that-
Camden Town in London.
There's Camden Town in London, so is
Yeah,
that
that I-
accurate? That,
Yes, I mentioned that in my walking tour, that it's named after him because he was sympathetic to the American grievances against England, and so they honored him by
that's
naming Camden after Lord Camden.
after Lord Camden.
Mhm.
And Rockport is Rockport because there was rocks and it was a fort.
There's
Well,
the
it's-
quarries, the lime quarries, and
Is-
there's rock land, and then where the quarries are, and then Rockport where they.
Isn't Camden also,
Goose River
If-
didn't sound so right.
What did he say?
It used to be, Rockport used to be Goose River, the town of Goose River. And then it changed it through. I'm spending a lot of time with the railroad these days because I'm designing a pavilion over the locomotive that's in the Marine Park. So if you have any ideas about how the kilns and all the machinery and outer buildings and things like that were, I'd really appreciate that.
In Rockport,
Excuse me?
in Rockport, that is, you're working on the railroad in Rockport.
Yeah, the
That was-
Rockport, it went from the harbor out to Symington Corner. And
Wow.
hauled the lime into town to burn it, and send it on its way.
And where are you doing a project?
Oh, it's right in Marine Park there, and when you go into the harbor at Rockport, there's, look to the left, and there are the kilns, and sitting in front of that's an old industrial locomotive that they just spent a fortune to remodel and refurbish and all that, so they want to put a roof over it.
Okay,
Chris, do you happen to know, is that rail track available for walking? to
I
Well,
Sutton?
I've been thinking about that. I know people that have walked it, and I've walked part of it. But it'd be fun to develop an old trail that you could walk over there. But I'm just trying to find where they stored the
Yeah.
locomotive, if they ever did, and all the other buildings and things that went on with the lime industry.
I think that old trail goes by the golf course. And I.
Oh, yeah, there's the
Yeah.
fifth hole plays right over it or
Mm,
right along it.
I know you can go part of the way, but I've never tried, and it should go all the way to Simonton Corner
Right.
and a little beyond.
Well, there have been people that have written about walking it.
What did you say? There are people what?
Have written
There,
about.
there have been people that have walked it and written about it.
Well, Chris, I don't know, is there a Rockport Historic Committee like we have?
There's a
Oh.
historical society.
That would be the historical societies.
It's combined.
Yeah. Rockport.
Oh, so that's, next to Hannaford, that's.
Yeah, they're part of that.
Yeah. It's a combined
We
Camden
can't access
Rockport
that
Historical
right now.
Society.
But that would be the resource.
Yeah.
To find. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, never mind then, Chris, sorry.
Well,
The other thing I read that I wanted to share in my conservation lens is over the winter, I tend to pick up Henry David Thoreau's in the Maine woods. And he wrote, as he was preparing in his way to go up to Millinocket area, he was passing the Camden Hills. He wrote of his particular interest in the Camden Hills and the coastline here. And I just found historical value to that because that was maybe he passed away in 1870. So that must have been in 1860s that he noted his interest in the geography of the Camden Hills. And, and, you know, thought to share that. That was something that brought me great joy when I read it.
That's neat.
Yeah.
That's all. I think,
Oh, thanks.
this is BD Drain. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, well, I like coming. I like it. But I'm a real mess.
Okay, I took notes, so I can definitely help with this.
Good, good, because I was too.
Oh, one more thing.
Yeah,
If you do talk to Michael Goebel.
yeah.
Vain.
As a follow-up to this document that he sent Pat, maybe they have training sessions or information sessions for historic preservationists regarding this kind of technology and what,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
Archiving.
Well, not
Or you think
archiving, no, the, you know,
Training sessions about how to.
how to advise, or how to apply this to historic
Energy.
districts. Yeah,
That would be great, like a
Yeah.
building, like a
Yeah,
smart building or with historically minded material.
well, how to preserve our historic districts, yet move them.
Right,
To
into
the-
more energy
yeah.
efficient.
next century. We should take a trip to Augusta sometime and I'll introduce you,
Yeah.
take you to the Maine Historic Preservation Commission. And introduce
That'd be
you.
awesome. I mean, I would love it. I mean, so often I hear now, especially with energy, is people are saying, oh, we'll go to mini splits and, you know. Electricity, although it's clean, is the worst conversion rate of energy and it's aesthetically. You said it, I didn't say it.
Ugly,
Yeah.
yes, well, this
You know,
is a problem.
And so it's an issue and,
Mhm.
so, you know, I'm on oil and,
Yeah,
you know.
we want to get off oil.
Mhm.
Right. So it's an ongoing kind of ethical dilemma I have with my own personal situation.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I imagine others have that too.
yeah.
Yeah,
But that would be great. to have.
Well, some roofs don't look all that compromised when they have them on it. Nobody's thinking about that problem.
Well, I
Yeah.
think you do get used to it after a while,
Yeah.
you know, you might notice it at first. But
Yeah, and the shape of the house and the fenestration and, you know, all that is what really grabs you
Mhm.
from the look from the street.
Orientation also.
And if we put trees all along, then you can't
Right.
really have solar panels anyways.
Yeah,
what did Chris just said?
Chris, did you say something?
Oh, I just said, throw in orientation there,
Orientation.
Yeah,
for your solar panels,
right.
not all roofers.
Solar's the opposite direction.
Yeah. I did see on the Aldermere farm, I don't know why I didn't notice it, maybe just because the leaves are down, because they have a windmill.
Yeah.
But that's not, is that Rockport or is that,
That's right.
that's Rockport,
They have a window, is that what you
a
said?
windmill?
And that's been there for a long
Turbine, a
time.
wind turbine.
In the high school, that's.
The high school
Yeah.
does, yes.
So does everybody know what they're
What,
committed to? Because
Yeah.
I didn't write down, so what each of us committed to
Well, I can
doing.
tell you, I'm gonna follow up with the walking tour and
Yeah,
find out how to make a pamphlet and
Yeah.
all that's needed and how much it'll cost.
yeah, and you're going to write an article.
I'm
for the
gonna write an
newspaper
article about Ezra Bramhall.
About Ezra Bramhall. I'm
And I'm
putting
gonna
that
write a
down.
history
Yeah.
about the lighthouse.
Okay, what are you
Okay, what do I
doing?
do tomorrow?
and then we have,
What are you doing, Mike? Because I honestly, I didn't write this in the notes. You're finishing it.
Finishing the Friends, talking with Audra about when to,
Application.
presentation,
Audra.
possible presentation to the select board.
Okay, and meeting with the lawyer. Right,
Yes.
okay. I can't even think what I said I would do. I'll think about that when I get home.
and then we have a
Will,
meeting on
Tuesday,
Tuesday
okay, Tuesday.
to look
meeting.
at stuff.
to look at Curtis Island, Dee Dee's stuff.
Mhm.
And Chris is going to look at the software, the archival software. Maybe you could
Make a
send a
recommendation.
link around or check in with Ken Groves to see what they use in the library. I'm suggesting these since you had a lot of information about it, but maybe check further, see what are we doing? What do we have available to us now? And is this something we could actually, use around all of this history
Yeah,
stuff?
Okay.
Sure,
maybe-
I'd lo-
And Gross too, and see how they're doing it, and are they up to speed on the latest technology?
Chris, I
Sure,
can-
I'll look into that. Just poking around for a few seconds while we were during the meeting here. It looks like, the software I was looking at, they license it to town associations. So, it seems like it's set up for this kind of application, but I'll talk to Ken. And who else do you think I should talk to?
Oh, I was thinking we talked to Allison just because she might be using something already with the scanning.
Mhm.
Just,
Yeah, where is she dumping it?
Yeah.
It's just on a,
it's just
I actually don't have Allison's contact information. You want to forward that to me and I'll talk to her?
yeah, that'd be great. And guys, I just realized when I looked at the screen that it says recording paused.
Oh, no.
So,
no, I think that happens
that-
at the end of the meeting, I think.
Oh,
Well,
Maybe-
timed out.
Press.
You're still live on Zoom,
we are,
but it's not being recorded on YouTube.
okay.
Chris Frieden.
If anyone was to-
Audra said last meeting that she was gonna check into the board and see where your application was, and try to move it forward. But, I haven't heard anything. Have you?
I haven't heard, and I didn't watch the select board meeting, so I'm not even sure if it was on it, but
No,
Yeah,
it wasn't.
we watched.
We watched it, and it wasn't on. There were a couple of new planning board members, so maybe you
I'll
could check
remind
up on
Allison,
that.
Yeah, I'll do that, and then.
Okay. I'm putting that in your,
Is there anything, I guess, as we think about, and we can determine this at a later time, but is there anything for next meeting that you all particularly would like to spend time? Would it be hearing from Ann on Jacobs Avenue? Would it be?
I
Yeah.
would, yeah,
Okay, should we
I would like to
do
hear
that? Okay.
Jacob's.
how she's doing with that and when is that gonna be? Because we skipped our regular meeting.
Oh, yeah,
It's the second Tuesday and.
Second Tuesday in February, which
February.
is February 14th, so bring your Valentines.
is that okay with everybody, or would you like to do it on a different day?
So that's
No, I think we should.
three and a half weeks from now, so, yeah.
We'll do a workshop and then we'll talk Jacobs Avenue.
Yeah.
And then anything else that people want,
Mhm.
A workshop?
or next
Next
Tuesday,
week.
Oh, okay, working meeting. yes.
working meeting.
Working session, that's not what Rosalie called it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Chris and Chris. Chris,
Okay.
I'll be mailing all of the files to your home tomorrow.
He's gonna stay all night and scan them.
You know, scan everything. You'll have a courier service arrive with a truck full of boxes for your home library.
Perfect, because I just bought a new shredder.
Okay,
See you, bud.
thank you, bye.
Yeah.
Bye, Denise.
Good night.